This is episode 245 of The Roller Coaster, and today I'm chatting with Jack Perez, also known as Jack, who launched CoolLife.com, an online community for midlife women to share and empower each other with expert advice and stories. We dive into ageism, redefining our lives midlife, and I know you're going to like the part where we chat about giving zero fucks. Buckle up, this is going to be a fun ride. This is the Roller Coaster Podcast. We are here to help you be empowered and renew your sense of purpose as a midlife mom. This is your time to redefine and reclaim your power as a woman. Just because our kids are getting older doesn't mean that our lives still don't have crazy twists, turns, ups and downs. And that's not to mention what our hormones are doing. We're navigating helping our kids plan their next chapters while quietly wondering, what the heck does my next chapter look like? My name is Lucy Q, wife, mom, podcaster, and journaling mentor. This is a crazy time in your life, but you are not alone. So I'm inviting you to throw your head back, arms in the air, and come along with me for the ride.
Life is like a roller coaster, baby, baby. I wanna ride. Roller coaster. Life is like a roller coaster, baby, baby.
Welcome to the roller coaster, Jack.
Oh, I'm glad to be here, Lucy.
So, as I was saying before I hit record, this is actually sort of the first time that I've kind of switched gears a little bit, and I'm really focusing in on talking with midlife moms, which is basically who I am. And, I connected with you online, and, I think you have a lot of wisdom, you have a lot of great information. And that's why I wanted to have this conversation today, was so that, we can expand on the conversation about what it means to be living midlife and normalizing that conversation around aging.
Absolutely. That's what I do every day, all day long. I think I might even do it in my sleep now too. Right? I mean, I am on a mission to normalize aging. And of course, Lucy, not by myself, because that's crazy talk, but I certainly am out there at the, head of the pack, making sure I make as much noise as possible to encourage other women to get also on the bandwagon. Ageism is the last ism sort of still alive that we aren't really attacking at full strength. And it's also the ism that we do to ourselves. We are sometimes our own worst enemy when it comes to ageism because of the way we feel when we look in the mirror, or the way we feel when we stand up from the floor, or the way we feel when we're overlooked at the coffee counter because there's somebody cuter and younger next to us and we don't seem to be seen. But I think we can show up differently and be very visible if we want to be. And I am working tirelessly to get that message out there, Lucy.
And I think the whole concept of ageism and how it becomes cemented in our brains actually starts, I'm going to say for me, it starts back when I was a teenager, because when I was a teenager, that's when my parents were in their 40s. And I can remember that they seemed really old. They did. They acted old. They seemed old. And then it was on my mother's 50th birthday. That's when I announced that I was having my first child. But all of those things seemed to fit how my parents were living their age. But now I'm on the upswing to 50. I'm going to be 49 this year. And I consider, when I look at myself and my mother at 50, I just feel that we're miles apart. I don't even want to consider age. And that's not coming from, a level of being conceited. It's just, sure, like I'm 49, who cares? I don't care. It's more about how I live my life. Now, that's not to say I haven't noticed changes. I mean, you're going to notice changes, whether it's, when you look in the face and you start to notice little wrinkles, or, you're getting, all of a sudden you've got this hair growing out of your chin that how did that become 2 inches overnight? You notice those things. But, I think more, and this was born through sort of, an identity crisis that I went through when my oldest went to university. I more look at aging on how am I living my life, and am I living it with purpose? So for you, what sort of ignited your journey, your relationship with diving into aging and making this part of your mission?
Well, like you, Lucy, and like so many of us, because there are just some hardcore facts about the human race that can't be overlooked. And that is that in the 1900s, in the early 1900s, a woman's average lifespan was about 51. So if you think about it, what was there to do after menopause? Most women didn't even get through menopause. And now, flash forward, we hit 50 and we are looking at potentially 30, 40, 50 years left of potentially fairly productive time. But we have no models we have nothing nothing is there for us historically to model after. We are in a very unique position right now. Baby boomers, young baby boomers, Gen X, and even elder millennials. We are in a position where we are currently defining what that second act of life can look like for women in a way that's just never been made available before. We just didn't have access to those years, but now we do, and we're healthier. A lot of us have better healthcare. I know that healthcare is an issue for many, and I'm not trying to be cavalier about that. I know that's a real problem, but in general, the world has access to better healthcare, better water, better food. So we are living longer. And you're right, our 50 is so different than our mom's 50. So your original question was, what was the impetus, right, for me to all of a sudden realize, heck, I am that age, right? Because I wasn't really thinking about age either. I went through menopause, Lucy, and you name it, whatever weird symptom that menopause can affect you, it did. Like everything from weight gain. I gained 40 pounds. I looked like a Shar-Pei puppy. Like you could literally pick me up by my back fat. But unlike Shar-Pei puppies, it's not so cute on me. But, so I had the weight gain. I had the dysregulation of emotion. I had anxiety for the first time in my life. I'm not an anxious person. I'm like the glass is mostly full person. All of those symptoms, when they hit me, and I was 52, and I thought to myself, wow, is this what's going to define the rest of my life? Because I plan on sticking around for a really long time. I have a lot of plans. I feel like I just got started, but am I going to be debilitated by these physiological changes, or can I do something about it? But the reality was, when I went to go look for information, I couldn't really find anything. And this is a few years ago, right? I'm 57 now. So this is 5 years ago. Already a lot has changed. If you look today versus 5 years ago at the sheer number of brands that have popped up that are targeted and focused on the opportunities and challenges that present themselves in this season of life for women, it's amazing. It's a proliferation of brands, and we're going to see even more, because I read recently a statistic that by 2030, just in the US alone, Lucy, so not in Canada where you are, there will be 89 million women over the age of 45. Like that's
Wow.
let that sink in. Let that sink in for a bit. So what are these 89 let me start over. What are these 89 million women? What do they need? What do they want? And there's a lot of opportunity there to be had, because it's a completely underserved marketplace.
There's opportunity, and there's also a lot of conversations, because as you pinpointed, and I had never actually thought of this before, but you'd mentioned that in the 1900s, the average lifespan for a woman was 51. So basically, we're the equivalent of 80, 90-year-old women going back
Right.
not too long ago. And
well, it's 120 years ago, but still, I mean,
that's
but
not
in our
that,
lifetime,
yeah.
but even in our lifetime, I mean, in the 70s, my mom had to have my father's written approval to get a credit card. Okay.
Yeah.
That's our lifetime. That's our lifetime. So once again, we women at this stage in the world's history, we're being offered this opportunity to really change the paradigm and set the trajectory for generations behind us. And we have an obligation, really,
we do
normalize aging so we can get on with living our cool life and not worried about how old we are, but just to stay healthy, to stay functional, to stay connected.
And for me, I also look towards the role model that I'm being for our kids. They're now 20 and 23, 24. So they're young adults. We have two sons. And I look as they're embarking on their lives, one's finishing college, the other one's got another year. And I'm encouraging them, like, your 20s is your years that you go out and you live life and you take risks, you take challenges, you do all of these things, you try all this shit. And who cares if you fail?
Well, that's what the 20s is all about, right?
But as I'm saying that,
many mistakes as you possibly can, right?
Yeah. But as I'm saying that, I'm like, but wait a second, that's what I'm doing right now.
Oh, that's even better.
That's what I'm doing. And it's like, I am trying new things. I mean, if you look at it, how many women out there over the age of 45 are starting podcasts, are, dominating some areas of social media? I heard today that TikTok, their largest demographic is, I think it's women 38 to 45. But
does not surprise me. But
if you go on TikTok, you do have the videos coming up where, the kids are saying, okay, boomer, time to go home. This is no place for you. It's like, wait a second, we own this. We're dominating here.
Yes, it's incredible. It is. I mean, it's so many women are finally deciding to reevaluate where they are in their life. And in fairness, we spend a fair amount of time because if you decide to have a baby, right? If that's your choice. And if you decide not to have kids, more power to you, right? I mean, that's okay too. But if you decided to be a mom, well, because we are biologically designed to make the baby, right? And all of what that entails, right? Because it does require you to take time away from another priority, whether that's your career, or you have to focus on that. You really, really do. If you're going to do it right, it requires attention. You are making a human, you're creating this human, and then you're responsible for getting that human to a place where someone else is going to want to live with them, right? Because we don't get them. But it's our job to make them palatable enough that someone else is like, yeah, I can hitch my wagon to you for the rest of my life. That's no easy task, by the way.
No, it's not. It's not. But it's,
so when we're finally done with that.
Yeah.
Right. So when we're finally done with that and we've launched, my kids, freshmen at university, all of a sudden I totally see your showing a parallel between our 50s and our 20s, because we are sort of given this somewhat clean slate again to go out there and be a little selfish, or as one of my thought leaders, Kay Newton, says, sensibly selfish, right? Sensibly selfish. So yeah, it's a wonderful time. It's my favorite decade so far.
It is, because I think we get to, and I've said this to some people, I'm like, is there just like a date that we pass on the calendar when we start to give like what I call zero fucks?
Oh,
like you're just like, I don't fucking care. I don't care. I don't care what you think of me. I don't care sure, I'm human like everybody else. I have emotions, but in general, you're like, right. I just don't care. I don't care if you like my opinion or not. I don't care what you think of me. It's
Yeah.
liberating. It's a very liberating phase to go through.
Yes, it's amazing, right? Because I am there. I give no fucks. I really do not. But I have women in my life now because of what I do, because of this platform. I have access to women who are in their 60s and their 70s. And I'm telling you, the potential for it to get even better is there. So it's wonderful to have access to women in their 70s who are still traveling and still exercising and still running businesses. Those are the models that we need to have in our life because they're aspirational. We get to decide when we want to stop doing something. Now, I know some people get hit with health issues, some people get hit with tragedy, notwithstanding, those types of events, but just normal, everyday, today life, we have so much more power over changing the trajectory than we think we do. So, yeah.
And that's, I want to use that as the point that we headway into, really what you've created in this new season of your life. And that's, the online community that you're building. So maybe you can share a little bit about, the community and what your goals and objectives are with that.
Well, when we a little while ago, you asked me sort of what was the impetus, and I said that the physiological change, the physiological transition really spurred me because I was very frustrated. And I didn't want other women to be as frustrated. So that's why I created the platform. It is basically a virtual digital platform whereby I bring industry thought leaders from around the globe. We are at, oh my gosh, we're onboarding 4 more this month. We are at 57 women from around the world who have deep domain expertise in those opportunities and those challenges, whether it is menopause or, divorce or dating after 50 or empty nest. What about elder care? What about those that are saddled with having to take care of their elderly parents all at the same time while their teenage kid is stealing their car, right? The sandwich generation. I could go on and on and on about the opportunities that present themselves at this period of life that are fairly unique. And nobody was addressing them in an empowering, kind way. And it's not like we don't address tough topics like dry vagina. We do, but we do it in a way that's helpful and empowering and potentially giving women information so that they can course correct or change something that's not working for them. And Lucy, the most interesting thing for me personally about this is that when I started, I was the sole contributor, and I told you, I think now we're at 54 or 57 global thought leaders. But and yes, we're focused on the issues and opportunities that are in midlife and beyond now. But half of our audience, is below 44. And so what that tells me is that people are curious. Women in particular are curious about what's coming. And they're coming to the platform to get information. And while I'm on this mission to normalize aging for us that were in it, even more importantly, oh my gosh, let's change it for our daughters, for our nieces, for our cousins, for the young women in our life, so that they have something else to figure out when they get here, right? So that this isn't an issue anymore.
Yeah, definitely. And certainly, we talk about aging and midlife, and it's typically anchored to menopause, but really a lot of this begins years before. That perimenopausal phase can start years before. And in fact, for the most part, I think I've been dealing with perimenopause at some level for at least the last 10 years. And
yes,
you don't think your body is going to do those things. And all of a sudden there's weird shit's going on. And you're like, seriously, what am I have to deal with now? And it's not until, because we always have like that, I want to say there's an age in your head. I want to say, whether it's 50 or 55, that you think, oh, that's what menopause is. But it's not. It can start in your 30s. And there's a lot of women that are being diagnosed with early menopause in their 40s. So, I think putting again, putting a definite label on this has its own dangers, because all of our bodies are different. They do different things. And God knows our hormones have a life of their own. There is.
Yes, they do.
There is.
Yes, they do.
Nothing.
And it's funny. I had my son at 38. So I was a bit of an advanced maternal age. And now in hindsight, I realized I started having perimenopausal symptoms as early as 40, 41, 42. So if you think about it, I had a toddler at the same time as I started to have hot flashes and insomnia and here's the deal. I didn't realize it at the time. It's only with the knowledge of having transitioned all the way through and the benefit of looking backwards, so the benefit of hindsight, that I now understand that that's what was happening to me. Because Facebook is sort of a dying breed, but you know how they have on Facebook, like, this is what you did last year at this time or whatever.
Oh, yeah.
And I get reminders of like 12 years ago or whatever, 13 years ago, that I couldn't sleep that night. Like, oh my God, up at 3 o'clock in the morning, what's this about? Had no idea what it was about. I now know what it was about, but you're right. The hormonal changes can begin really early. And if we don't have an idea of how to control them or how to guide them or what we can do to rise above them, then we become victims of them. And that's just, it can be very debilitating for a woman. It can be.
Oh, absolutely. And I think that's why the conversations around women and hormonal changes in midlife are so critical, because that's where you find out that you're not alone. You're not the only one experiencing this, but it's also not something that we commonly talk about, because, certainly my experience is that growing up, going right back to elementary school, when you're segregated for sex ed. So that right off the bat, when they're talking about girls having periods, that's a conversation that's held away from the boys. So right from the get-go, there's that, I don't want to say some people will call it body shaming or period shaming or whatever it is. There's just that separation. And I think that keeping that part of our lives separate from who we are is, part of the problem. That the normalizing the conversation it's like, hey, wait a second, like, what's your period doing today or this week? Or, what about the hormones and the emotions and the hot flashes and this whole perfect storm that we're dealing with? Those are the conversations that are so critical that I think we need to have more of.
I agree wholeheartedly. If you think about it, every other human on the planet gets a period, and every other human on the planet, actually more than every other human, because women outnumber men, goes through menopause, goes through that transition. What's the secret? There's no secret. And I think the more we share with each other and the more we learn from one another, the easier the transition. And even when it sucks, even when we're grieving, even when we're hormonally incredibly challenged and fighting and struggling our own physiological chemistry, the knowledge that we're not alone, the knowledge that there are other women out there with similar experiences and potentially with some offers of solutions that may or may not work for us, but you don't know unless you hear them and try them and at least ponder them. But if we don't talk to one another, if we don't get the information out there, then we're in the dark. We're all alone. We're alone and segregated and separated, and it's scary and isolating and lonely and pretty miserable. And we don't need to be that way, because there's so many of us, damn it.
And I think that's where we have to take responsibilities for our own journey, whether it's, physically what you're going through or emotionally what you're going through. I think too often we've been conditioned to look to a doctor, to look for a professional, look for that magic pill that's going to solve all of our problems and make everything go back to normal overnight. And that doesn't exist. And I think ultimately we're each responsible for our own health, our own well-being. And that means going out and having the conversations and finding the answers and saying, okay, you know, have a conversation with Jack, and Jack says, okay, this worked for me, maybe try this. Or somebody else says, go try this. It gives us options. But when we confine ourselves and only rely on one source of information, that's really where you do become isolated. And I don't know any other place besides online where women are having these conversations and connecting and sharing at this level.
Yeah, but you know, the online world is a pretty powerful place.
Oh, for sure.
And so if that's where we get to that's where we get to start the conversation, if that's where the movement starts, I think that that's a powerful platform to take over, and we're doing it. We're making it happen. But yeah, we need to be able to share this information. And, you know, sadly, Western medicine just hasn't spent a lot of time thinking about, or, you know, looking into women's particular health issues, because we've never really been used for any of those big clinical data studies, because we're complicated, right? Because of our biology, because we as beings can literally manufacture another human being. You know, think about that. Holy cow. We with just a little sperm can turn our whole bodies into this machine that makes another human being. It's complicated. And so I can see why we've been overlooked in medicine for so long. And that's part of the problem, is even finding a doctor who is well enough versed in the opportunities and challenges that come with being a woman physically, and then are also willing to work with you as an individual to find out what is actually going on for you, because every woman experiences menopause, I think, maybe slightly uniquely and a little differently. And so it's not a one-stop shop fits all type of answer. It really isn't. You have to do the work to figure out what's right for yourself. But listen, as someone who was in dire straits and for over a year, I'm on the other side of that. I'm letting you know, it's worth the effort. It's worth the effort to figure it out.
Oh, absolutely. And, you know, I think one of the largest components that, you know, from my experience, most women have expressed as their sort of first early symptom, and you touched on that earlier, and that's sleeping and insomnia. That's a massive problem. And if you don't sleep properly, then that can bring on a whole slew of other problems. And then you don't know which of the problems are because you're not sleeping, or which of the problems because of hormones, or maybe it's all because of the same thing. Who knows? But you have to figure out that sleep part. And it's frightening to consider how many women are out there that are chronically exhausted because they're not getting the proper sleep. And I mean, fortunately in Canada, federally, we've legalized marijuana use. So where I live, all of our liquor stores are controlled by your provincial governments. So our provincial government have the liquor stores, and in the back of the little store, the liquor store, you have like the cannabis store. So there are a lot of women that are experimenting with this as a tool to reduce and, you know, reduce the symptoms of menopause and also get that critical sleep. And I recently found a product that it's actually not the marijuana, sort of the part that gets you high. It's the CBD, which is just the calming. They've now formulated one that is specifically for sleep. And I take that and I sleep. It's magical.
Isn't that amazing?
It's and how you feel after a good night's sleep is, you know, for lack of a better term, it's night and day.
Oh, absolutely. Right. There's, you wake up, you open your eyes in the morning, and if you are rested, at least for me, I'm like, oh, bring on the world, bring it on. If I open up an eye and I have been fighting my bed the whole night long, I don't want to stay in the bed because I'm just angry because it's not working. but I don't necessarily want to go out and take the world on either. And so you just kind of, I hate that, because for me, it's like, I just need to get through the day. I don't want to think that way. I don't want to feel that way. I don't want to just get through the day. I want to live the day, because, and here's the other thing that happens, at least for me, what's happened for me is that I really understand now that I have far fewer days in front of me than I do behind me. And so while, you can look at that and go, oh, poor Jack, or poor me. No, what that does is that makes me way more crystal clear about what I want to do and where I want to spend my time and energy and who I want to give my time and energy to, because I don't have that many left. Whatever, however many are left, they're far fewer than I've already lived. And so I got to make the best of it. And there's something about that, having that filter, that for me is very liberating, very liberating.
And I think that sort of goes back to, what we were saying earlier, and just not caring about what other people are saying or thinking about us. Because it's like, hey, if you're going to keep playing your game and playing small and living over there, great, you be you. I don't care. But this is what I'm doing, because so often we're told, in the world of personal development, you're like, okay, write down what you want people to say in your obituary. And I'm like, I don't want to know what people are going to write in my obituary. I want to know what, Lucy has to say to me before she takes her last breath. What is she going to tell me then that she learned that I just need to go ahead and do now? And that's all. And when you think about it, your last breath self is going to be sitting there saying to you, no, go out, take that chance, live your life, live big, don't hold back. Because you know what? This is all there is. Go and live life.
Yep. Yeah, I have a good friend of mine who is an RN, and she dealt a lot with end of life patients. So she was there at the end of many people's lives. And she's like, Jack, people do not say, oh man, I wish I had worked more, or I wish I had more money in the bank, or I wish I had another car, right? That's not the stuff that people care about. That's not the regrets. They say things like, I wish I had taken that time to learn to dance. My wife wanted to dance and I didn't do it, and I kept pushing it off. I wish I had taken that time to learn to dance. I wish I had taken that time to, spend more time with my grandkids, or I wish I had taken that time. It's about connection, and it's about putting themselves out there, not about how many material objects they have accumulated. Because, ladies and gentlemen, you can't take it with you. So why bother?
It's true. Although a lot of people think they can, but it doesn't work that way. I think it was.
Well, I guess back in the Egyptian with the tombs.
Yeah, they tried that.
Right. They would load those puppies up with all that they would need. I think that shit's still there, by the way, unused.
Well, I think I was watching a speech, a commencement speech by Denzel Washington, and he said, "You don't see U-Hauls following the hearse." He's like, you don't get to take it with you go. He goes, but the Egyptians did try it, and all they got was robbed. So
yes, they did get robbed. Oh my God, that's really funny. Denzel Washington, you do not see a U-Haul following a hearse. That is so good. I'm going to borrow that from Mr. Washington.
Yeah, it was a great video. Now, Jack, as we wrap up, do you have any final thoughts or words of wisdom that you'd like to share with our listeners?
Absolutely. So from my viewfinder, there is a huge chasm between mini skirts and depends. And that's where I want to live as big a life, as cool a life as I possibly can. And we can do that.
And where can people connect with you and learn more about your online community?
Well, the online community is called Cool Life. And that is a play on the whole idea of being cool and continuing to have a cool life. It is spelled all cattywampus, although it is in the Urban Dictionary as a synonym for cool, and it's spelled K with a K, K-U-E-L, life. So if you go out there, You can find me on Instagram, LinkedIn, Twitter, Pinterest, Facebook, all of it, and also on coollife.com. And you can easily connect with me if that's something you want to do. If you are someone who has a message, you really need to get in front of women and talk about ageism, let me know. I mean, I'm always looking for more industry thought leaders. And, there's always room at the table. At my table, there's always room for another woman. So, pull up a chair or I will scoot over and we can share one. It doesn't matter. So that's about it.
Awesome. Awesome. Let me ask you, is there wine at that table? Because if so, I'm in.
Girlfriend, your choice. Rosé, champagne, white, red, what's your choice? I'll make sure it's there.
Awesome. Awesome. To connect with Jack, make sure you check out the show notes. I will have all of the links in there. And Jack, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you, Lucy. It was so much fun.
Right.
If you're looking to take a deep dive and really get clear on who you are, what you want, and to start living life on your terms, then I invite you to grab a copy of my Empowered Midlife Mom Journal. It is the very first teeny tiny baby step that you can take to begin your journey of self-exploration. I promise you, it is painless and takes just a few minutes a day. Get your copy at therollercoasterpodcast.com/midlifemomjournal or check out the show notes for a link. Thanks for listening to this episode of the Roller Coaster Podcast. Want to chat or share your ideas about today's show? Pop me an email at hello@therollercoasterpodcast.com. Don't forget to connect with me on Facebook and Instagram at The Roller Coaster Podcast. Our theme song, Roller Coaster, was performed by The Lucky Setback. Audio editing by the one and only Jeff Quigley of Quigley Creative.
Life is like a roller coaster, baby, baby. I wanna ride, 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 ride. Life is like a roller coaster, baby, baby. I wanna ride, 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 ride. Roller coaster. Ride, ride.